I'm gaveling into session the regular monthly Traffic Safety and Parking Commission meeting for the city of Burlingame. It is Thursday, October 14th, 2021 at 7:02 p.m. This is our call to order. Mr. Wong, if you have some additional special Zoom instructions you want to read, and then I'll go to the next item.
Thank you, Chair Whedon. Tonight we are on Zoom webinar format. In order to contact the commission, there are two ways to do it. You may send an email to publiccomment@burlingame.org. Public comment's all one word. And then the other way is when you're in Zoom, go ahead and raise your hand. Because we're in the Zoom webinar, we have disabled the chat function for certain reasons. So with that, back to you. Okay,
the next item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Since I am providing the flag, I'll ask someone else to lead. Maybe our Giants fanatic can lead the pledge. And I will give me 1 second to unfurl the flag.
Would anybody mind if I said I pledge allegiance to the Giants? That probably wouldn't be patriotic. That wouldn't be patriotic.
Am I getting in here? No.
Good U.S. citizen. All right, I will do this, but I will stand and put my hand across my Giants emblem here.
Stephanie, maybe you can pin the screen so the flag stays there.
All right, are we ready? Yeah.
All right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Go Giants.
The one disadvantage of having the chair as the flag bearer is a little bit of a transition. So I can get back and get us to the third item of business. Okay, that brings us to the roll call.
All righty, Commissioner Lee.
Commissioner Lee, you're on mute.
Here. Vice Chair Martos.
Here.
Chair Wetton.
Here. So, noting Commissioner Rebelos won't be here tonight. We believe Commissioner Israelite may join us later, so we'll just note it for the record when she does join. And if people could be on the lookout if they see her pop up on the screen. With that, we can move to the approval of minutes. Are there any comments to the minutes? Either Commissioner Martos or Vice Chair Martos or Commissioner Lee?
No.
So, Chair, these are the August minutes.
Yeah, we should clarify that. Thank you.
I was absent for the August meeting, so I'm going to have to abstain.
Oh,
And I don't think you have a majority.
that leaves us. Yeah, so it looks like we're going to punt again.
Could we put that later in the agenda when we have Commissioner?
We can wait for Commissioner Israelite, or we can just do it next month. Either one. So if Commissioner Israelite appears on time, we can see if we want to revisit. So with that, let's move that for later in the meeting possibly, and then if we have to, for next month. And now we move to public comments. Members of the public may speak on any item not on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to suggest an item for a future commission agenda item may do so during this public comment period. The Ralph M. Brown Act, State Local Agency Open Meeting Law, prohibits the commission from acting on any matter that is not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. The commission chair may adjust the time in light of the number of anticipated speakers. So with that, do we have anybody from the public who would like to make a public comment at this time on something that's not on the agenda?
I don't have any emails in our public comment box.
Okay, and let me just I don't have the view of participants. Do we have anyone? We do have attendees. So I think though that that's Ms. Beatty who will speak on the BPAC item. So with that, let's close that and move to item 6A, community BPAC update. Perhaps we could promote Ms. Beatty to the panel at this time, and she can always decline, but if she wants to give us any updates. Yeah. Hello.
Hi. Sorry, adjusting my settings. Hi, just one item, non-agenda item from the BPAC tonight, which is that we noticed in the street repaving that there are a couple streets that, or one street in particular that's been repaved where crosswalks weren't added. That's Garden Street, which is kind of right in the middle of Mills High School and very close also to Franklin and BIS. And just wanted to highlight this because we had questions after we did the bike and pedestrian master plan. It seemed to us that this type of crosswalk should be painted automatically, being that it was near a school and in a prioritized pedestrian zone. And so we were just curious about what the process is now when the city does kind of standard repaving projects, how they are deciding whether or not to put crosswalks on in the light of the work that was done on the bike ped master plan. Obviously, we probably can't get into it tonight, but that's an item of interest for us to discuss in the future. Thank you.
Okay. Well, before we close it, I guess I would ask Mr. Wong. I know that sometimes there's some grand plan about steering pedestrian traffic to certain places, and if there's any thought that's given to that, now might be a good time to share it, or you can always come back.
Sure. No, thank you, Chair Wetton. Yes, so we work with the schools, each school and the district itself, because they do have their routes to school that they're promoting, and so we'll look at that, and that's what that's what we're trying to get after. What we'll look at a garden, I'll look at that and try to get a better understanding. And the guys when they're resurfacing, they look to us, and that's why I think we're sharing our street resurfacing list with BPAC, so we can try to, if this was missed, we'll take care of it. But in other cases, that's why we're trying to, for the future projects, make sure you guys take a look, and if that's there, that's why we're getting you guys the list. I think you guys do have the latest, so those are the comments we're more than happy to take in and then review at that time.
Okay. So just noting for the record, Commissioner Israelit has joined us safe and sound from her journey. And just in time. So we have not approved the minutes yet, Commissioner Israelit, because we didn't have 3 votes yet, because Commissioner Martos wasn't at this particular meeting. So at some point, we're going to circle back to that, just a heads up. But for now, I'd like to just keep it moving to item 6B, which is the EV progress update, which I'm excited to hear.
Thank you, Chair Wetton. And you guys did request this to get an update, and I think hopefully we'll be able to answer some of the questions I know that have been kind of floating in everyone's mind about some of the reach goals. But because you asked and she was available tonight, Miss Michael will be presenting the EV action plan. So I will turn it over to her.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you. I think Andy reminded me, I think I last came in 2019, probably right before the pandemic started was when I last presented, and I introduced the idea of the EV action plan. And since then we have adopted one. So I'm excited to share it with you and EV updates in general. Do you guys see stuff? Is the presentation up or?
Yes, I see it.
Okay, let me see if I could. Okay, I see it now too. Sorry about that. To change some screens around. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so we adopted our EV action plan, and the main purpose of it was the city was getting many notifications from different programs about EV opportunities. And I felt that we needed something to help focus us and decide, prioritize locations, come up with goals of how we want to grow EV in the city, and be more organized and strategic how we grow overall. So our EV action plan aligns with state targets. Can you, Stephanie, push this? There's some animation. So yes, thank you. So all new vehicles in California have to be zero emission by 2035. So a lot of the work that we're doing now may feel that the number of chargers may seem high for a city of our size, but it's what we're calling future proofing. We're anticipating, much growth in EV in the future. And we also would like to electrify our municipal fleet. So that's happening slowly. For example, a lot of the vehicles that staff may drive or our building inspectors, they're now using hybrid vehicles, which are seen as a really good option for the kind of driving that's done in the city. It's short distances, and which means it's running mostly on electricity in that time. Usually there's only about 20 miles of electricity in those plug-in hybrids, but that's often sufficient for the kind of driving that's happening. And it's tends to be lower cost for the city than going full electric. Stephanie, you could hit, thank you. We also wanted to prioritize areas for public EV chargers. I think you may recall when we last met, I asked even the commission, how they charge their vehicles. And we also put a survey out in our e-news and got a pretty good response. I think we had about 200 respondents. And due to the survey and what I've heard in general, in going to many different events that they talk about EVs, people tend to charge at home. That's where it's the most convenient. That's where it's cheapest. That's where access is the highest. But that may not be possible for everyone, especially if you live in multifamily buildings. Thank you, Stephanie. So 52% of buildings in Burlingame are multifamily. And out of those, 59% were built in the 1950s or earlier, which basically signifies that old multifamily buildings are really hard to put EV charger stations in because of space and power capacity and costs. So when we prepared this EV action plan, we wanted to think about how can we support EV drivers, even though many of them will charge at home, but how can we support those that don't? And how can we support also visitors and employees to our city? Next slide. So we started with creating some goals. You could push enter. So we want to first have a goal of 100 charging ports by 2030. I wrote ports because sometimes there's a station with 2 ports on it. So we want to have 100 in our city. As of just a few weeks ago, we have 36 with the new Highland Garage opening, which doubled the number of chargers in our city, excitingly. So that's just a graphic showing what 100 would look like. And also wanted to look at number of registered EVs in Burlingame. I think right now we are at about, I meant to grab that number. I don't want to get the number wrong, but we still have a ways to go. But I think it's possible. You could push enter too. And once we get to 5,000 registered EVs, that's equivalent to reducing 13,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions, or 1.4 million gallons of gasoline. And then we have a goal, like I mentioned, about our municipal fleet to by 2030 having 10% of the fleet be EVs. That may be a bit ambitious because a lot of our fleet are trucks or heavy duty vehicles, which may not have an EV option, but it's still something that our fleet manager and directors are taking seriously and always seeing what other options are available. Next slide. So if I mapped here where we have existing EV stations and priority ones. So the green ones you'll see are in downtown Burlingame mostly, and one in downtown Broadway. And the red ones are priority locations. Those are showing Bayside Park is coming up, something we're focusing on in the future. That would provide access to many of the hotels, the users of that park. And also we've heard that there's high interest, Burlingame is a hotspot for car sharing. So electric vehicle car sharing that may be going from SFO to the hotels. If they needed a place to stop, we would rather them go there than to downtown Burlingame or Broadway where parking is more valuable. There's another red charging station at the courtyard that signifies our municipal fleet. And I'd like to get more, and then you see the red one coming up for the new rec center by Washington Park. There's 7 EV charging stations slated for that new center. And then and I'd like to get more in downtown Broadway. But I drew these the circles around the charging stations to really show that these areas are also the most dense areas in Burlingame. That's where most multifamily buildings are located. And that's why we also want to focus on really serving those areas as well. Next slide. So progress to date, the first last summer, we adopted a REACH code, which requires all new development to include EV charging. So that means any new home, and not just any new residential home or even a home in Burlingame, since we're mostly built out, even a home, many people purchase a home and then renovate, do a large scale renovation. So any home that has a large scale renovation or newly developed needs to install one ready to go. That means the station's already there and just plug in ready, level 2 access. Every apartment building needs to provide level 2 charging for 10% of its residents, and level 1, which is just a standard outlet, for 90%, which means every unit needs to have at least a standard outlet to be able to plug into, which I think will support electric vehicles, but also we're looking potentially of other e-mobility that will grow in the future, like scooters and bikes, to be able to provide charging access for those. And commercial buildings too, that will be required 10% of parking to offer level 2 charging. Under process, Burlingame is considered to have streamlined permitting. That means that if you wanted to install a charging station in your home today, that you could pretty much go in for a permit and receive it the next day or soon after. It's a very easy process and without a lot of red tape or bureaucracy, or no red tape or bureaucracy. Regarding innovation, we're always looking for opportunities to explore what's out there. So one example is Peninsula Clean Energy has a curbside charging pilot program. I will say this did start before the pandemic and it's been put on hold, but I look forward for it to restart again. But what that is I actually saw one the last time I was in Los Angeles, but that's one for street parking, that there may be a charging station hooked up to a street light or some other electricity option, and that you could just parallel park like you would on the street and be able to plug into a charging station. So we see this as especially interesting for the North Burlingame Rollins Road development area that the city is working on, where they're going to introduce allowing housing in that area too. So since it's sort of could be a lot of new development, it could be very interesting to allow and to install curbside charging. And then funding, that is the big often challenge. Electric vehicles charging stations are expensive, so being able to fund that. And we recently applied for and got awarded a large grant from Cali VIP. That is a statewide program funded by the California Energy Commission to install electric vehicle charging stations. And last week, the city council approved the big project for new charging stations at the library. So it'll be at the Donnelly parking lot by the library. It's a grant for $300,000. and it will be 5 fast chargers there and 10 level 2 chargers. That sounds like a lot, 15 more chargers in downtown Burlingame, where we already have at least 26 or so, but the 10 level 2 charging stations will not be exclusive parking for charging. Anyone could still park there, just to keep allowing that. So there's no loss of parking space until the future, when maybe that'll need to be rethought. But the 5 fast chargers will be exclusive for charging. So we're really excited about that. And today, in fact, I went to the ribbon cutting ceremony of the Highland Garage, which was another exciting, just getting more chargers in our community. And those use PowerFlex, and the library ones, we've ended up also contracting with PowerFlex. So if you wanted to try those out, I recommend downloading the PowerFlex app to your phone. And it's sort of like a Starbucks card. You actually have to add money to it already. And then when you go pull up to the charging station, there's a QR code you scan, and then it shows up automatically. You put in some information and you could start plugging in and charging, and it takes from your mobile wallet. Hopefully they'll allow for, in future versions, allow for mobile Apple Pay and different options too. Oh, and then we are also, PCE stands for Peninsula Clean Energy. We are looking to them right now to help us set us up for Bayside Park, the Courtyard, and the Community Center as the other priority areas that we wanted EV charging stations. So what they will help us do is provide assistance on where the technical aspects of putting charging stations there, so that when a grant opportunity does come up or funding does happen, that we need an RFP or a bid, we have everything ready to go and can move fast on it, rather than having to scramble to figure out what exactly we want at each site and how much power is there and where's the power at. So to have it all figured out in advance. Next slide, please. Oh, okay, so I guess I just said all this now, but there's information about the grant and then the PCE, where we're getting technical assistance. You can move to the next slide and then push enter a few times. Go ahead. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about what we're doing specifically for multifamily buildings, because those are, yeah, perfect. That's our challenge. So I'll just go around on the bubbles. In the orange bubble, it says, let residents know EV charging is available in the neighborhood. So for instance, with the new Highland Garage, we distributed postcards to all the multifamily buildings in that vicinity, so that they know they have access, and EV charging stations are really close, that if they were on the fence for an EV, or they have one that they've been frustrated without access, that they know they could get to it now. The next bubble is about the reach codes, that all new multifamily buildings must offer charging access for all units. The next one is to offer incentives for multifamily EV charging. That's something that we're exploring. How we could do that. Is it to go through the residents, or is it going through the landlord or the property manager? We're looking to other cities to see how that's happening, if anything's arisen from it, and to see if any funding is available. But right now, or maybe even sending out outreach to multifamily buildings to let them know that we're happy to help with the program if they wanted to install EV charging stations, and connect them to Peninsula Clean Energy is offering incentives for multifamily buildings. So even making that connection and letting them know about it is something that we're looking to do. And that goes on with the next couple slides. So to engage with property owners, either by sending out letters, or through connections or tenants that reach out to us, and to explore different efforts that are happening in other cities. And like I mentioned before, we would also like to remember that scooters and bikes, electric scooters and bikes are gaining in popularity and could be a really good option for many residents that we want multifamilies to be able to provide access for charging for that as well. And I think the next one's the last slide. Oh yeah, this is the example of the postcard we sent out to the neighborhood. And next slide. And that's it. I left the website if you wanted to take a look at the EV action plan. It's really meant to be, it's not a hefty document. It really lays out the strategies that we're looking to do to improve EV access. It's meant to be a working document, something that could stay flexible as things change and opportunities arise. And I encourage you to take a look at it. And if you have any comments or suggestions on how to improve EV access or where you think charging stations should go or know of opportunities, please contact me. Thank you. Any questions?
I have many questions.
Okay,
but
let's
because
hear
I'm
them.
the chair,
I'm ready.
I'm going to go last. Yeah. So
Okay.
first, I'm going to go to Commissioner Lee and let her ask questions. And by the way, ask questions. Please, if you can, hold your comments. I'll give everyone one more bite at the apple after public comment. So Commissioner Lee, why don't you start if you have any questions?
2 quick questions. First, how are we encouraging or putting in the bike and scooter charging ability? I think that's a great idea. And then second, how many around the Broadway Avenue, lots of old apartment buildings there. So we really need them. I mean, the people can't buy an electric vehicle if they can't charge it. So I'm just wondering how many, and are we focusing on that area heavily? The Broadway Carmelita area. Thank you.
How many charging stations are over there?
Yeah, how many are we putting in over there? It's Broadway, Carmelita.
Right now, the truth is right now we have 6 fast charging stations over by Broadway, and they're not being really heavily used. So I was thinking of doing sort of the same sort of postcard campaign in Broadway too, even though those charging stations have been there for a while, just to let especially the multifamily units know that they're available for them.
Okay, thank you.
And then I think you also asked about
The
what we're
scooters,
doing.
bikes.
Yeah, those could mostly plug into a standard outlet. So those are easier to address. And as long as a standard outlet is available, it's possible, but that's with new development, a standard outlet will be required by each spot. And in the older buildings, that probably is remaining to be a challenge and part of the overall just outreach that the multifamily buildings need to know. And the best way that it happens is through demand by tenants and potential tenants. See, I think more and more buildings are seeing that they need to offer EV charging to attract tenants as a sort of this benefit. And so that's how it's happening on its own. But as tenants demand it, I think is really going to be the best way for the quickest way for it to see actual change happen.
Okay. Commissioner Israelit.
Hi, sorry that I was late today,
No worries.
but I'm actually very excited that I got on as soon as I did. It was hairy. Anyway, thank you for the presentation. I have 2 questions. One is, has the city polled or done any kind of survey of Burlingame residents to find out what number of owners, even, let alone renters, already have an electric car, and how many of them are planning on getting an electric car in the near future? So we have some, you were saying, I know this sounds like a lot of spots, I know this sounds like a lot of chargers, but actually maybe it's not enough, if the whole state is leading the country and the vanguard of pushing for almost all electric cars. So that's one question, like, do we really know where we stand and what the immediate future holds for our city as it is? And then the second question is, has the city looked at two electric car, single family homes and how they might be able to charge one car on the street as opposed to, we don't, honestly, many of us don't use our garages and it can be difficult to do two chargers in a driveway. And have we looked at any technology where people might be able to install a charger in for instance, the space between the sidewalk and the curb that would, be lockable or something so that not anyone could charge there, but that it would be accessible for the homeowner to encourage second electric cars.
For your first question, we did do a survey and I'm happy to share those results. I could send them to Andy and he could share them with you. We got about 200 respondents and we asked those exact same questions. Who has electric vehicle? If you do, where do you live? If you don't, would you consider buying one? And so on. And overall, we got positive, that there's growth, but it was only 200 people. But overall, I think the transition is going to happen with California state goals and what we see. So there is no magic number of how many charging stations a city should have. As much as I looked into it, there's no specific percentage of, how we could accommodate. But the idea is to do the best that we could. So I think if we get to 100 public charging stations by 2030, we'll be in a really strong position here in Burlingame. And I think your idea, I haven't actually seen anything like that about a private charging station, private curbside charging station, it sounds like you're saying. And I can look into it to see if other cities have come up with that, but I think it could be very interesting to, like you said, many people don't even use their garages, so it may not even be an option. Or maybe if they don't have a driveway. I know we don't have a garage and we charge just on our driveway, but I'll look into what options are available for that sort of thing. That maybe, I doubt maybe it's something we could just outreach to people to let them know it's an option for them. And I don't know, I could talk to Andy if there's any encroachment issues with that. I don't know, but that's an interesting topic.
Thank you. Yeah, it just might be something that we might need to, as a city, start to think about and in advance. And maybe there are products already out there, so it's just something to investigate. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for the suggestion.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Israel. Commissioner Martos, you're up. I see your hand.
Let me take that down. Ms. Michael, just a couple of points of clarification. So the multifamily buildings and offering access for all units, when does that start?
That has started for new multifamily.
Okay, right. And I wanted to clarify the must offer charging access for all units. What does that mean? If there's 100 units or there are 100 charging stations, that doesn't make sense.
So let's say there's 100 units. Let's use that as an example. 10% you must have enough level 2 charging stations. So 10 spots. Let's say there's 1 parking spot per unit. Okay. So 10 parking spots must have level 2 charging. That's open to all the residents, but every spot of the 90 other spots need to have at least 1 standard outlet. So which is just a regular plug that people could plug into. For instance, any car, even though level 2 and fast is much faster, most cars after a full night of just plugging into a standard outlet could get somewhere in the morning.
Okay, so 90 spots would have a standard wall plug-in like we have in our house, but 10% would have the level 2. Yeah,
to give you an idea, the California Building Code requires, I think their requirement is 6% of residential, so we upped it to 10%.
Okay, so I'm seeing lots of construction of multifamily buildings right now. There's one on Bayswater that's going up, big big building there, and so I can assume that that will fall under this new guidelines? No.
No, the ones that are under construction right now most likely got their permits more than a year ago.
I see, okay,
And didn't fall, but they will have charging stations. They'll probably have the 6%.
okay,
Based off the building code, but only the ones that you probably see being actually built next year.
Okay.
Because permitting and so on usually has quite a lag time. Those you could assume will have the 10% and a standard outlet for every single
Got it.
unit.
okay, very good. All right, thank you for that clarification. So I don't have any other questions.
Thank you, Vice Chair Martos. So I think I wanted to just, I guess I'll start off by asking Ms. Michael, have you had a chance to talk to any landlords, particularly this class of landlords who may have older buildings, they already have existing garages, or maybe the company that owns North Park and Skyline, which is a big landlord here in an older building?
We haven't. We've only talked to really the new developers when we were developing the REACH code, but we really haven't talked to any of the existing. But it's something I would be very much interested in doing, and reaching out if there's interest for them to provide access or to connect them with available incentives.
I mean, I'm trying to limit myself to questions, but
Yeah, if you have.
I'll in my comments, I'll say, and you've heard before, how important that I think this particular problem is. May I ask, you mentioned reaching out to other cities. Have you had any conversations with your counterparts in other cities who are probably looking at the same? I mean, we all have this same problem in California of a plan to have all new cars be EVs by 2035. But probably not a plan to knock down all our old multifamily buildings. So we're all faced with this same conundrum. Have other cities talked to you about how they think they can address this?
Not yet. The furthest organization that's on it is Peninsula Clean Energy, like I mentioned, that they're doing, engaging with actual property owners to offer their incentive. But I don't know which ones I don't know if any in Burlingame. I could ask Peninsula Clean Energy if they've taken advantage of this or not. And then maybe if you have, actual numbers or connections of actual existing buildings, I'd be happy to reach out to them. It's not information I actually have, but
it's too bad he's not here tonight. But Commissioner Rebelos, I think it's not a secret, lives in the Skyline Apartments. We realized the other day at the commissioner's picnic that we actually lived 2 doors down from each other. I lived on his floor in those apartments, and they are one big one, right? Because they own North Park and Skyline, 2 big complexes. And I'll double down on this when I get to my comments, but it's already a problem. This is not a problem that's theoretical. Like, this is already a big problem up there. But so let me get back to my questions though. You mentioned streamlined permitting. Staying on this issue, has there been any thought given to ways that we talk about incentives for landlords? If I'm a landlord and I say, I actually think my tenants want this, I can even charge them for it. So all the more reason to do it. Have we looked at just how streamlined the permitting process is for a multifamily tenant? I get that if I'm a homeowner and I go in for a permit, if I think to go in for a permit, which I might not think to go in for a permit, if I think to go in for a permit, I'll get it the next day. But I think that's probably less the blocker. Homeowners are fine. If you can take the time to go buy an electric car, you can probably get these things put in at your house. It's these multifamily landlords. So what is the permitting process for them? how much of an obstacle is it for them? Are there any tax implications for them? Like, does this count as some sort of improvement towards their
Yeah.
property taxes?
I don't think there's any tax benefits. I don't think when I asked our building department, how many of these EV charging permits they did get, I'm not aware of a multifamily building coming in and asking for a bunch of permits. So I don't know exactly what challenges they'd face, but I'm guessing it would probably really depend on the age of the building and, their electric system, because when it really comes down to is power. And even if we give the permit, they need to first check, that they actually have the power capacity to offer what they want to be offering for how many locations. So they probably need to do that work first before they come and
Yeah.
ask for the permit. But again, I don't think the permit is really the hurdle. I think it's the work that would need to happen beforehand to see if they could.
But when we talk about the work, is there things like, do they need any kind of easements to like kind of power hubs and network stations that are able to pass through a sufficient charge to the buildings? I know that can be, are there choke points where people need easements for power lines, or is this really something that just lives entirely inside the power utilities ambit of getting things done, and the cities just has no touch points?
Yeah, I don't know, actually. I think it probably depends if you're looking at a multifamily of 4 units versus one with 100 units. If they want to put in one charging station, or do they want to put one for each parking? I think it really depends. But, in Burlingame, we have a lot of, you mentioned Skyline, but most of our multifamily is smaller.
Yeah.
And I would think that putting in 1 or 2 stations wouldn't be that problematic for them. All
Yeah.
those 4 to 10 unit buildings.
Well, and having lived this, I can tell you that the 110 outlets are sufficient for a lot of people. I actually had a fairly long commute, and if I had consistent access to a 110 outlet, I could manage it when I lived in Skyline, but I didn't always have that access. I want to ask you about the reach code, and I'm sorry I have so many questions. I want to ask you about the reach code, which is, I get that probably for 2030, 10% EV seems like a decent number, right? But these buildings aren't built to be disposed of in 2030, right? So I guess my question is, have we considered a reach code that says you need to have 10% EV when the building's up, and you need power lines through the parking lot so that when people, as there are more EVs in 2035, 2040, you can plug in additional stations without ripping out walls and pavement and stuff? I know that that's something that we keep calling it the Stanford building, commercial building on downtown. I remember when we took a tour of that before one of the last commissioner dinners we had a few years ago. There were only a couple EV chargers, and we said, really, did you only put in a couple? They're like, no, there's a grid under here, and as there are more EVs, we can just add. And so I guess my question is, have we considered requiring that? So yeah, it might be overkill to have more than 10% in the next few years, but you are built out so that as times change, you're ready to change with them.
Yeah, I think that would be a good something that would probably be included in the next iteration, even if not power, to provide conduit
Right.
for each of the parking spots, because we did get pushback from when we spoke with the developers, because when you provide power, sometimes that means that they need to go up a transformer size, and that could really change the cost and the space that is available in these developments. But putting in the conduit is something that I think I could check on this, but I think it's required from the building code already.
Oh.
But I could verify that.
That would be great if you could follow up on that, but
I will.
I'm glad you're bringing up the transformer thing because I have heard that too. I mean, have we considered in these reach codes saying you do need to account for the transformer space you might need if you go, if, you know, again, I mean, it's not like a fever dream. Like the governor said, there will be no new non-EVs in 14 years, right? That's a blink of an eye in the life of the building. I'm sitting in a house that's 110 years old. So I think we could be very, and something that gets started, a building that just gets started on construction next year won't even be done until what, 2024, right? That means that like within 11 years, this is going to be a building that is existing under, a no all EV, all new cars are EVs regime. So again, should these buildings be going up without having the transformers that can sustain lots like this and the conduits? Understanding that, yeah, you don't need all the EV chargers today. And actually it might be a bad idea because EV chargers are going to get better. And
I was just going to say that too, the technology is changing. For just to give you an example of what we learned through PowerFlex, they have, they're the ones who installed it at Highland Garage, and they have this algorithm that paces out charging, let's say across 4 to 10 to 20, charging stations at a time, so that even if you have up to 20, you don't need to increase your power capacity, but instead it'll change the speed of how each vehicle is being charged. So the technology is changing, and just because we've had these exact conversations with developers of, well, maybe you should provide that power now because you'll need it in the future. And this is the argument just from the developers, perspective, but it's, why should it be on their shoulders to put in all this infrastructure that's changing, and I'm just saying what they've said. I don't necessarily know what I agree with, but the example that was really resonated with me is, how in hotels they used to have or some still hotels, like an iPhone charger.
yeah,
But now that's not compatible even. So every hotel may have these old chargers that don't even work anymore. So what there's, it's just about not wanting to commit to this technology that's still changing. But I agree with you completely that we need to really get these buildings ready for when 2035 is.
I want to stick to questions. I keep saying I'll do that. I am partially sympathetic to that argument. Like when you're talking about the last 10 feet, I think that's very true. I think it's a totally reasonable argument, and it's a reason why you shouldn't, maybe even 10% is high, to be honest with you. But when you're talking about conduit, maybe I lack imagination, but I don't think there's going to be you're going to need that conduit no matter what the technology is. And there's a decent chance, I'm not even saying put the transformer in, leave the space for the transformer, right?
Yeah.
Because I think what we heard from one commercial landlord, at least I heard secondhand, was that they didn't even think they even had the space to put the transformer in. I don't know if I buy that, it's secondhand, but again, I would just urge that as we look at these reach codes, that we at least make sure these buildings are ready, right? For more than just 2030. Let me ask one other question about the reach code.
Sure.
And that is does that apply? What about commercial buildings?
Yes.
Still applies?
Yes, and they're at 10% also.
Great. And then I was just going to ask you, have you been observing, you alluded to lot Y. Have you been observing that aside from the general observation? It's been pretty empty.
We have a dashboard that we can access that shows actual sessions and usage over, hour to month to year. And obviously it dropped through COVID. And
Yeah.
right now it's, they put in their Tesla adapters also.
Right.
So on EVgo, they now accept Tesla. And now they're at pre-pandemic numbers, but hopefully those numbers will keep increasing. But the use, there's definitely, it's not even near being at full capacity.
I would urge, and I think your idea, I love your postcards, and I think in the case of Lot I, there may be a Lot Y, there may have been a lot of Tesla owners like myself who went to the lot, saw I was incompatible, uttered some curse words, and unlike me, because I'm on the traffic commission, are completely unaware that it got fixed, right? So I think, and I would say that the thing about Lot Y is, yes, there's a lot of multi-residential buildings, and that's important. It's also next to a shopping district, and it should be helping the shopping district. So I would urge the notices to really go as broad, as wide as you can, and say, come to Broadway for lunch and supercharge your car, even your Teslas. You may even want to double click and say, Teslas can charge a Lot Y now. It's big news. Why don't you come have lunch on Broadway? There's a lot of new restaurants that, would love for you to eat there and plug in. All right, I'm breaking my rule. Okay, so I think that's all I have in the way of questions. So I will go back to the commission, well, actually, I'll go to public comment. I'm sorry. Is there any public comment on this? I'm sorry, I can't see my participants at the moment. I'm gonna go over and see if there's anything. I don't see hands.
There's no emails.
And no emails. Okay. So EV enthusiasts out there, had your chance.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm going to go to commissioners for any last words. I know I took up probably too much time. Commissioner Lee.
No more comments.
Commissioner Israelit.
No comments. The questions I raised earlier are really my only comments.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Israelit. Commissioner Martos.
No comments.
Okay, I will just one last parting shot, which is I do think you said this already, Ms. Michael. Having owned an EV for a few years, people want to charge at home. I think I would really focus on this issue. I think homeowners can handle this for the most part, right? There's not a lot of friction there, but people in multi-residential buildings have a real problem. And if you can't charge at home, you really may not buy an EV, right? I think a lot of people are so busy these days, they can barely get out of the house. I can barely get out of the house. And the idea that they're going to go and park their car somewhere for an hour and a half and like arrange their plans around that, they're just not going to buy EVs. So I really think it's, and I noted your statistics, which is, I think what you meant to say is 52% of residents are living in multi-residential buildings, and then 60% of those are pretty old buildings. So you're talking about 30% of the people living in Burlingame, give or take, who are like in this position where they probably would like to have EVs, even to just plug into a 110, right? And they can't. So I would counsel, for what it's worth, not to spend a lot of city resources and energy trying to get to like 100 and not spend any time trying to solve this problem, even though this is harder because it's a little out of your hands. It's in the hands of private landlords. So I understand this is a lot harder, but they're the ones who can make a difference here. In all likelihood. I mean, it's nifty to have it a supercharger next to a shopping district. I thought it was a good idea, but so far, we're not seeing a ton of uptake. And I'll just note, I have lived this, right? So I lived in a building in Burlingame, and it was like people were fighting over 110 outlets and blowing circuit breakers, and it was it's like really not a good situation.
Can you
And
share
it's,
more about that? Like, did the property manager try to alleviate it in any way or just let it?
I mean, let's get into it. Like it was an extension cord that ran like, people had extension cords that ran 30, 50, whatever number of feet, like massive extension cords that were wired into like locked control rooms. And then there would be multiple outlets for those extension cords. And if two Teslas plugged in to the same extension cord, the circuit would blow. So then there would become like a standoff. And at some point the city came up and some inspector said, you got to take them all out. So
Did you try and ask the property manager to do?
oh yeah,
something
I was
like that?
pretty closely engaged with the property manager about
And
it.
they
And
just refused?
no, it wasn't a refusal. They were actually trying to help. It was the city actually that shut it down. They were trying to help, but they didn't have the physical. So they didn't have the physical capacity to really accommodate it. What they really needed to do is it probably improve whatever transformer resources they have plugging into the buildings and run even just a simple conduit so everybody could plug in a 110.
Yeah.
And frankly, they could probably charge tenants they could probably find a way to charge tenants for that. They could probably find a way to charge tenants, open up a second form of income. Because people, if you want to own an electric car, you'll pay. But I think it's a physical investment that I'll get off my soapbox in 30 seconds. It's a physical investment that we absolutely need our landlords to make if any of this is going to work, at least for a pretty substantial minority of residents in our city. And we have to figure it out because those buildings are not getting knocked down. And I think for the new buildings, I think we really do need to make sure that they're not, if they just do the minimum on these reach codes, we may regret it in 20 years, which is, only a fraction of the life of these buildings. So I'm totally sympathetic to the idea of not putting in more than.
Well, I really appreciate all these comments, and it's true that I don't get the opportunity to hear from tenants and landlords and property managers. So this is definitely motivating to do that outreach and connect with PCE where they actually may get financial incentives and spread the word and try and really be engaged with these property owners.
And you made a great point, that talk to other cities. I would really encourage you to engage with your counterparts and just, put this problem on the table and say, this is likely a problem for all of us. We all are going to be living in a state that doesn't allow internal combustion engines in 2035, and we all are going to have these buildings. So how are we going to reconcile this? So I appreciate the presentation. That was a great presentation. Very helpful.
Well, it's exciting to get people who are interested and want to chat about it. So I love the questions and the conversation. So thank you for the time.
Thank you. It's fun to be part of this revolution. Okay.
Chair Witten, could I have one go back with Ms. Michaels?
Yeah, of course. I'm sorry I didn't see the hand. Go ahead.
No worries. Ms. Michael, I just want to clarify something. So in 2035, all new vehicles have to be electric, right?
Yes.
Existing vehicles can still be gas powered.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. We don't have to purge our fleet of gas powered vehicles in 2035. Okay, I just want to clarify that.
Thank you, Commissioner Marks. I would say though, go ahead, Ms. Michael. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to make a comment that I'm waiting to see all these car manufacturers really get behind that, because I think that's really been lacking too. So, it'll be interesting to see how that evolves over the next decade.
Yeah. Full disclosure, for a while I was representing one of them, and I think they're, evidences they are behind it. But I do want to say one thing that I forgot to mention. I do think the one part of this plan that I thought lacked a little ambition is the percentage of city vehicles that'll be EV. That struck me as quite low. If you said, in 2 years, I'd say I get it, but 2030 is 9 years from now. In all likelihood, there are no vehicles we've got now that we're going to have in 2030. I don't know why we would be not trying harder to replace a higher percentage with EVs so that by 2030, that number is much higher than what I saw. I get trucks are a little different, but
And
we
most
have a
of
lot
them
of
are being-
non-trucks.
Yeah, and those non-trucks are being, I think we have 110 vehicles in our fleet. There's, I think, a portion of that is the police vehicles, and then we have these trucks and sewer and maintenance. And then the on-street, like what building inspectors take and what staff takes, those are being transitioned as we speak. Those are the easy ones, but they're a smaller percentage of the total fleet. But I agree with you. I think we could strive higher.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to tell the police department what to do. So, but I don't think they're
Well-
driving their cars to LA either. Right?
No, but they are purchasing, I think, 2 plug-in hybrids right now. So
Yeah, great.
yeah, and plug-in hybrids are showing to be, I think I said this earlier, as seeing as a very good option for local governments that are looking for that to go electric, but may still need that security of being able to run on gas if needed.
I can go all day and I know I need to stop, but I'll just say this and I'm going to close it, which is, this is also as an economic issue for our city. We have an opportunity to produce more of our own energy because we can put solar in and then use it instead of importing it as gasoline, use it in our cars. We could, as a city, may be a much better off if we really push hard on this. And I hope we do. Okay, I will stop. I'm going to gavel it just to stop myself. Ms. Michael, thank you so much. I appreciate the presentation. Okay, that means we are up to item 6C, which is, I believe, Old Bayshore feasibility study update.
All right. Thank you, Chair Wetton. As you know, back in August, we first introduced this. We've been talking about it a lot, but we first presented it to the commission. And what we saw was a little snapshot of it. We had great feedback from that meeting. We had some questions. And one of the bigger ones was, what about the entire corridor? So Mr. Brian Fletcher with Calendar and Associates, as well as Jason Hansfield with BKF are back here to show you what more of the corridor looks like and try to give you just more of a feel. Again, this project is a feasibility study. With it, we hope to at least provide some guidelines for the developers out there, as well as what we want that area to look like. Currently there's no funding to expand it to final design, but with this, we'll be able to go after grant funding with the outreach that we did and utilize that. So the details of some of that, while we want to have them, I'm sure most of you do, we won't have them until we start getting our hands a little dirtier into it. I'd like to point out, we do have some folks also on this from we have Mr. John Hutar, who seems to be on one of the attendees of the president and CEO of the San Mateo County and Silicon Valley Convention Visitors Bureau. And I believe we have some of the hotelers if you guys have some questions. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Fletcher to make the presentation.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. I really appreciate it. Let me go ahead. If you can allow access for me to share the screen.
We will. I believe Steph will be able to do that.
Fantastic. Let me, okay, how does that look to everybody? Is it up on the screen? Thumbs up. Fantastic. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time tonight. As you know, this is the second time that you've seen this. As you know, with other plans and processes, this is an evolution. We start off with not much information. We reach out to the community and stakeholders to obtain information. The plans start to formulate and develop. You saw some initial alternatives and weighed in on them. We're now presenting the preferred alternative plan that has a little bit more detail. And then we are going to be using your input and refining it and putting together the final report, which will have detail, but being a feasibility study, it's going to stop short of model numbers for benches and light poles and things like that. But what it will do is talk about look and feel and character and general guidelines for how, like Andrew said, how this corridor should develop. So my goal tonight is to review that draft plan with you and obtain feedback we can continue to utilize to refine the plan and develop the actual report, which will then be presented to council and get input before the final plan. If you remember the last time we presented, actually, let me just go back to the process. As you remember, you saw the slide. We did reach out to the community multiple times. This was during initial rounds of COVID. So we did a community survey. It actually was pretty effective because our community in this area is mostly businesses, industrial, and hotel. So doing a community-wide survey, actually, first survey we received 73, second survey we received 38 responses. We also reached out to 12 different GMs of hotels, 6 of whom responded. We utilized all that input to develop the alternatives that we presented last time and continue to refine. Last time we did present 3 alternatives. They ranged in number of travel lanes, with the preferred alternative being alternative number 2. Just to recap what those plans look like, it was 1 lane in either direction with a center turn lane. Where we had opportunities, we would provide center medians for some additional landscaping, potentially green infrastructure, not only in the medians, but also in landscape planted strips on the sidewalk. And then the preference for bus pullouts was expressed. So those were some of the basic concepts of that. And we did talk about this idea of vertical connections to the Bay Trail from Bayshore Highway. And I'll show you some refinements of those concepts. We did go over the cross sections on how these plans would address sea level rise, how they address doing the Bay Trail against existing, and also how the Bay Trail would happen along proposed new developments in the future where we had more space. So that was just a recap of what we had showed you. Now we're kind of going to move forward, and I'll speak a little bit more detailed and a little bit less fresh. We certainly want to, as this plan develops, give everybody a better picture of what this looks like, and that's why this is kind of the entry slide, and I'll explain this one in a little bit. So as Andrew said, I'm going to close the screen so I can see the whole thing. As Andrew said, we did take a look at the entire corridor in somewhat more detail, and the legend in here that I can speak to a little bit more. But essentially for the entire plan, we wanted to identify the lane configurations, where we think we could do medians, where they would be planted, identify gateway locations, connection points, the vertical connection points, and so forth. So let's zoom in a little bit and I can show you a little bit more. I believe everybody can see my cursor, so follow that in the location that I'm talking about. So as you know, as we go from Millbrae Avenue southward on Bayshore, we're going from the city of Millbrae into Burlingame, and the city limits are approximately at this location. This would give us an opportunity for a gateway sign, and to be determined whether that's a gateway sign into the city of Burlingame or identify this as a special district and a gateway sign to the district. But we're thinking of enhanced planting, gateway signage to reflect that gateway feature. The majority of the corridor, you'll see 2 lanes, 1 in either direction with a center turn lane. These represent the medians that would be able to be planted, and looking for specialty plantings within those. You can see sidewalk trees as well on either side, and then you can see where the bus pullouts would be proposed in any location. I know one thing that came out in the last discussion was this idea of vertical connections from Bayshore to the Bay Trail. And when you go out there today, believe it or not, there's actually a substantial amount of vertical connection points. However, they're very much poorly identified, somewhat hidden, somewhat feel a little bit private. So they're not as inviting as they potentially could be. But on this plan, you'll see those vertical connection points identified with first a red circle identifying that we need to make these entry points off of Bayshore much more visible and inviting. The yellow representing public access. And then typically at that connection point, that's where we would have a pedestrian node, a small little pocket park, seating area, rest point at the intersection of two pathways. The final point that I'll show is just enhancement to crosswalks and ensuring that those are highly visible, as well as where we have bike lanes intersecting vehicular paths, the conflict zones, we would be highlighting those with green paint. Moving southward, we're using the same conventions. Again, you can see the median locations, street tree locations, crosswalks, whether it be at an intersection or mid-block crossings. You can see the vertical connection points where they're existing. Believe it or not, this one is existing and a very good example of one very much hidden from view. As well as indicating new locations when properties in this area redevelop to encourage those developers to provide those vertical connections from Bayshore over to the Bay Trail itself. So what does this look like? Again, we use the typical vignette. You can see one lane of traffic in either direction, the center turn lane, where we have the ability to do center medians, but when we have driveway aprons to adjacent businesses, that's where we leave the center turn lane to still maintain those traffic movements. Where possible at mid-block crossings or any intersection, we're going to want to do pedestrian refuge islands for additional protection. And then you can see the bus pullouts and the bike cycle tracks. So we're trying to eliminate the conflicts between bikes and buses by bringing them on a raised cycle track around the bus itself. Other typical things you'll see here are the new light fixtures. So we want to make sure that we've got a consistent, not only vehicular lighting, but also in addition, pedestrian lighting, which is very much lacking on the corridor today. So we've indicated alternating vehicular high-low fixtures and pedestrian fixtures. What I mean by a high-low is that it'll be a tall fixture that will illuminate the roadway, but it'll also on the same pole have a lower level fixture that will illuminate the pedestrian zone. What does this all look like? In cross section, you can see the two travel lanes, center median. We would have a buffer lane between the travel lane and the bike lanes, a 5-foot planter strip for street trees. You can see the high-low fixture that I talked about. And then, of course, the bus pullout and the cycle track, bringing the bikes around the bus, eliminating conflicts. So this is just south of the Benihana's entrance, right in front of the gas station. This is what it looks like today. With these improvements, this is what we would be envisioning. Of course, you see widened sidewalks for pedestrians, planted planters with new street trees. We've got the bike lanes that are buffered from the travel lanes. We have the crosswalks with highly visible crosswalk coloring. We have mid-block pedestrian refuge islands. In the distance, you can see the bus pull out. And finally, you can see the high-low vehicular and pedestrian fixtures. From a slightly different angle, looking back at the Shell station, you get a better view of bus pullout. Bikes would actually go up a small ramp to access the cycle track and then back down and continue moving forward. So that's Bayshore Highway. Now moving for a little bit more detail on the Bay Trail itself. I'll first talk about those vertical connections. So this is actually an existing condition out there too. On the left side of this image, we actually have the Vagabond Hotel. On the right side here is the Elephant Bar Restaurant. And there's actually public access that's provided. However, you know, there's a planting strip between the sidewalk and the public access. There's very limited signage. You've got barriers and objects in the way, such as the fire hydrants. You know, and it just doesn't make it a very pleasant kind of highlighted experience. So on the right side is what we're trying to encourage, is that we would highlight the entrances to these vertical access points with an enhanced entrance node, different type of paving, and signage. We would do a different type of paving to delineate the pedestrian zone from vehicular parking areas. Designated Bay Trail public access parking will still have to be provided per ABAG Bay Trail guidelines. And then where we have intersections between pedestrian access trails, we would like to encourage small pocket parks and seating areas and rest stops for the Bay Trail. You can see we're proposing to do more of a straight line pathway behind existing buildings where our right of way for the Bay Trail is narrow. Right now, it's a very much an undulating pathway. At times, it varies in width. We feel we can get a much more usable, wider pathway if we remain straight and up against the adjacent seawall. So here you can see existing conditions, the existing seawall. You can see the undulating pathway. Again, multiple different widths. You can see that connection of the vertical access point going to Bayshore. What we would envision is something that looks a little bit more like this, where we can have enhanced paving, where we can bring in new pedestrian-oriented light fixtures, where we can bring in some seating areas, again, the public access parking, additional signage for public access Bay Trail, and maybe some fun opportunities for art incorporated into the plaza or into the seawall. Again, this cross-section really hasn't been modified much. We just want to ensure that as with everything that we do for Bay Trail and the guidelines, we're going to be heavily referencing two existing documents, one from ABAG, which gives you design guidelines for the Bay Trail, and then the other one is BCDC guidelines for, I believe it's called shore spaces. Those are going to be kind of the guiding documents that developers are going to have to follow when they propose new developments along the shoreline. We need to make sure that our guidelines are complementary to that and not contradicting anything there. So when we go to develop the report, we're going to be highly referencing those two documents. And then, of course, providing just some basic guidelines for the Bay Trail where we've got gaps at Easton Creek and another small waterway as we go towards the Airport Way Bay Trail connection here. Now, this is not to say that we still want to encourage developers to meander the pathway a little bit, try to encourage them to incorporate it a little bit more into the overall public access, but this is giving kind of the basic requirements of what we need there as far as bridges over those creeks, the vertical access from Bayshore along Easton Creek to the Bay Trail itself. And then in these situations where we've got more space to play with and the entire kind of right of way that is governed by BCDC, we think that we can handle sea level rise without necessarily doing a seawall, but more of an earthen situation. So with that, that is my presentation, and very much want to open into questions and comments.
Sorry. I'll switch it up slightly. Commissioner Israelit, why don't you start off with questions? And like our same format, we'll try and stick to questions and take any public comment and come back around for additional comments.
I have no questions, just praise.
Oh,
Thank you.
Yeah. I'll come to that too. But first, let's get to additional questions. Commissioner Lee.
Yes, thank you. I had a few. First, I agree with Commissioner Israel. It's really looking very good. The overall plan, the concepts, the care taken, it's really looking very good. I'm liking it a lot. A few questions. Let me see. You mentioned pedestrian fixtures, high-low for the street lights. How low is low? What is the Kelvin on those? And where are they located? I see one here on top of, oh, that's a high. So on the left by this palm tree, there's a high there.
This is the high.
That's the high.
This is the low.
Okay, so let's pretend it's evening. Pedestrians are much more visible if more than the top of their head and their shoulders is illuminated. So if they have a light down low, like at 16 feet, that would glow out sideways, so their whole body is illuminated. We kind of have that at the Morel crossing at Carol Ann. So this high one over the crosswalk is not necessarily good for pedestrians because pedestrians need their bodies illuminated, not just the shoulder and the top of the head. And I think the ones that are high over the sidewalks, it appears like they're 30 feet high. That's way too high. 16 feet is where pedestrians like it. So it's an intimate height. They don't want to feel like they're out in this vast wide freeway. So I would like to see those lowered. And what's the Kelvin on those, on the pedestrian? Can we get it a warm color on blue?
So I appreciate your comments and absolutely duly noted. This is where the idea of what's the level of detail that a feasibility study provides versus a master plan versus a detailed plan. I do not know a specific fixture. I do not have a specific Kelvin. I do not have a specific foot candle identification for that. What we're identifying is that we would like a mixture of vehicular and pedestrian lighting, and that's really where we're at, and thematic. So
Okay.
I hear you loud and clear. I think we absolutely do need to visibly represent that low fixture as a low fixture and get that lower. But to the extent of the detail that we provide the feasibility study, it's not going to be providing the level that you're looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
My next question is on the crosswalk. I see it's orange here, which is fine. Is that the plan, maybe to make it a brick, or is it going to be a high visibility crosswalk? We definitely want it to be high visibility. And these look really narrow. That looks like just a 5 foot. Like, I don't know how those 3 people are walking abreast. It's like a fake drawing. I can see that. But anyway,
Yeah.
I'm hoping that they're wide enough that, for example, this couple with the stroller could actually walk side by side. That would require about a 6 foot crosswalk as a minimum. Because
No,
that's how
these are-
people go there in groups
Yeah.
a lot. So that was one
Yeah.
thing. When we go, can you put up the slide for the Bayshore pathway, please? The one near the water? Yes, this one. So in other cities, I've noticed that these pathways become, well, we're hoping it becomes super popular. And then bikers, scooters, strollers, every type of fun vehicle on the planet will be on this. So a lot of cities put a center line divider so that people go one way in one direction and one way on the left, like pass left, keep right, that kind of thing. And I'm thinking that if this is only 10 or 12 feet wide, we're going to have some choke points here. I think perhaps even the center pavement, those yellow pavers, one up the middle could be yellow, just kind of give people a separation. Because we're pretty orderly. We would tend to walk on the right because we drive on the right. Anyway, it's my suggestion to consider a delineation.
Sure.
And last thing is going back to these lights. I think the ones along the water, with respect to the environment, like herons live along the water frontier. I've seen blue and white egrets, blue herons, white egrets along the waterfront, particularly where the creeks come out. But I think those lights should be considered to be dark sky lighting, way down low, dark sky, not this overall glow. We have them, Mr. Wong probably remembers, in Burlingame, Washington Park has dark sky lights throughout the park on their pathways. And that would be great to have here, dark sky lighting along the waterfront. And those were my questions and comments. Thank you. It looks great. Looks great.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Lee. Commissioner Martos, Vice Chair Martos.
Thank you, Chair. I had three questions. I was wondering about the gap in the Bay Trail in front of those businesses. Yeah. Is that, maybe Mr. Wong knows, is that deliberate? Do we need to get the businesses that own those properties to allow the Bay Trail to be extended there so we can continue from south of Broadway and continue it on here? Do you know anything about that?
Through the chair.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have details, but I know there's quite a few. We've got a lot of redevelopment going on along Rollins right now. And these are the very questions. I believe this whole parcel is being looked at. And that will be obviously something we're going to definitely pursue as filling the gap. It's our opportunity to. So, which is why this feasibility study is key, because they're going to come asking questions at some point.
Right. Okay. Okay. And then I was wondering about the bike lanes, and you know, it looks great. The design looks really nice, very attractive. But the bike lanes, I'm wondering how it connects at Broadway and how it connects at Millbrae. You know, we have a real challenge on California with a direct route to the BART station and the multimodal station in Millbrae. And California is a terrible road to be biking on. This would be a nice alternative if people want to feel a little safer biking. But I'm wondering how you connect, if we have a plan to connect at Broadway to some other main bike route, and on the other end at Millbrae Avenue to get into that multimodal station.
Yeah, right now these improvements link up to the improved Broadway interchange. So the bike facilities that have been provided as part of that interchange, it would link up right at the on and off ramp location right here. But beyond that we didn't look at those connections beyond that interchange.
I will say at Millbrae, we stopped short at the city limit line. And so there's really only not really anything we can do beyond that.
Yeah.
It's not our jurisdiction. But back at Peninsula, we are adding some enhancements with green pavement. And then also on the northbound, if you want to go back, Brian. Yeah, on the northbound, no, sorry, back to the other one, the southern segment. Yeah. On the northbound side of Old Bayshore coming from airport and the interchange there and the bike ped overcrossing, we suggest a bike lane there where there isn't a bike lane right now. I think it's just Sharrows. It gets pinched down a bit. And so we're widening that and suggesting some right-of-way dedication to accommodate that.
Okay.
Thank you, Jason. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, I think that's important because it's a nice bike lane, and like I said, it would probably be safer for bikers to travel down that road to get to Millbrae than down California. But it's they could have a way to connect on the ends. Okay, and then the last question I had was where you show pedestrians walking on a beautiful landscape, beautiful streetscape. Yeah, like this. So the businesses, so how feasible is this? I mean, the businesses that are down there, I know there's some restaurants and other things, but did you come up with this concept knowing that in the future there will be more pedestrian friendly or consumer friendly businesses in that area that would encourage people walking with their child in a stroller and walking bikes and things like that, taking buses up and down this corridor? Is there something that I don't know that you have some insight to? I would love to see this a lot more pedestrian friendly, but the businesses down that corridor don't seem like they fit in this concept that you have here.
Yeah, so I could speak to that if that's okay. My business is actually on Bayshore, almost directly across from the Elephant Bar. So I certainly walk the corridor and experience the corridor on a daily basis. And so this is a little bit forward thinking. There are redevelopment projects within the pipeline, additional hotels. I know directly across the street, it's been recently fenced off. It used to be the old Gulliver's Travels restaurant. That whole area has been now fenced off and looks like that's about to be redeveloped as well. So I don't know for exact whether residential is coming in, but I do know for a fact additional hotels would be coming in. The hope and the idea is additional restaurants would be encouraged by that. Those people will be walking to those restaurants, will be walking Bay Trail. We did hear from business owners, from the GMs, that they wanted a more walkable area. I mean, right now it's at most a 5-foot sidewalk with a lot of obstructions. So, I think making it more walkable is definitely what we need to be doing in the future, for the future.
Got it. Okay. I appreciate that. That's good information. Okay, that's all the questions I had.
Through the chair, just to add to Mr. Martos, and we get some additional clarification. Part of this, a lot of this will have like Top Golf. That's something that's been expressed that's being out there, and it'd be great for hotel guests to utilize the facility by just merely walking along there. But you've also got that, and we do have some hands raised in our attendees, so they may speak to that. But I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Okay.
So Chair, I had one go back on that. Mr.
Yeah, go
Wong,
ahead.
Top Golf is it going to be at the golf center, or has it moved down north of Rollins or north of Broadway?
No, the facility is still by the golf center, but this
Okay.
obviously by Bayside Park, so it's not,
Yeah.
or not too far. You'll be able to walk. There will be entrances by Bayside.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, this area here is a lot further north than where Top Golf is, if I remember correctly. Okay. All right. Thank you.
I will, since I used up so much of my time on the last topic, I'll just limit myself to one quick question, which is maybe it should be more obvious to me, but the plan that you've presented, it does contemplate a continuous through route to the Bay Trail south of Broadway. Are we contemplating? I know that's, on the very right side of this map. I mean, I know now it's like kind of a creek in a swampy area. And I think it's been a while since I've been there. There used to be a bridge that was like all broken apart and falling apart there. Are we contemplating maintaining some continuity there, or is this still something that's out of reach?
Oh, in orange here, you can see that we are very much wanting to encourage a gap closure there. That's connecting the existing Bay Trail along Airport Boulevard and the existing Bay Trail that's already out there at this location. So the orange is the gap closure.
Okay.
Referring to, I'm sorry.
No, that's right. That's exactly
Okay.
what I was asking. And it's riding through parking lots, and I think you had 2 bridges proposed. And, well, that was the only thing I just wanted to make sure I was clear on. Let me go to public comment. Perhaps we could promote Mr. Hutar, and there's a woman here named Lisa. I'm sorry, I don't have a last name. We could promote them, and Mr. Hutar, you could go first.
Well, good evening and thank you. And I speak to you as a resident and as the CEO of the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Applause for your plan. Making this area on the north side of Old Bayshore complementary to what we have to the south at Facebook Virtual Reality Campus is a win-win for our visitors, and kudos to you for taking that on. Just a couple of questions and comments. The question the chair just asked, making it contiguous and a complete system would be paramount. It's really hard to explain to a visitor, well, if you want to go on a morning jog, you'll enjoy a good amount of Bayshore view, but then you're going to go down a vertical connector and onto a sidewalk and make a left and get back on. So any steps that can be taken to do this, quote unquote, correctly, I would highly encourage. Knowing it's not an easy lift, but from the visitor, from the executive, whomever staying, family, that would be important. The vision of this area morphing into more of a biotech campus through some rezoning that we've been talking about, I think it complements very well. And I think naturally you will then have part of that first discussion, more micro mobility of that bicycle lane also being scooters and folks jumping on a scooter, going to lunch, coming back. So keeping the integrity of that where the design is heading, my personal opinion, is very important. And then lastly, perhaps you could just look into your crystal ball and what does a feasible timeline, not holding you, committing you, but what might it look like to get this done? It's becoming apparent that the corporate market will remain shuttered for a foreseeable period of time as we work through the Delta variant and all that goes with it. And the sooner we can get it for this more leisure-oriented traveler, the better it would be for hotel occupancy. And then I'll stop and defer to my colleagues. Thank you.
Hi, this is Lisa Kirschner. I am the general manager of the SFO Marriott, and I'm also a resident of Burlingame, just like John Hutar. Thank you so much for allowing us to be on. I too have nothing but praise. This is very exciting. I think it's gorgeous and definitely an improvement for all of the visitors that we hope will be returning to Burlingame very, very soon. Just a quick reminder, before the pandemic, we were very lucky to enjoy occupancies of over 90% on Old Bayshore. Very successful, highly successful, and we contribute quite a bit to our general fund and want to continue to do that. The attraction and the appeal of Old Bayshore and the Bay Path is very important to our visitors and our residents. I run my dogs along it myself on weekends, so I'm all for everything that was presented, like really, really great job. My owners will be really pleased to hear about the improvements planned as well. A few things I'd just like to point out on behalf of our visitors and also our residents. Wayfinding is very important. How to get to downtown Burlingame, downtown Broadway Street, helping our businesses, I think is something we should consider. Maybe even how to get to BART. Some people actually do walk from my hotel all the way to BART, so that might be nice. We have a little over 9 acres at the Marriott, and there's a lot of trash and there's a lot of dog, waste, and so we try to pick up and clean our share. But you move on over to my neighbor and then Elephant Bar, and they're not open right now, and it's really messy, I have to say, and embarrassing when my guests take a nice stroll with their kids or with their pups or take a bike ride. We have bikes that you can rent at our hotel. So if I can encourage plentiful trash bins and maybe the doggy poop stations where people can put some plastic bags in there, or you can have the owner to do that. But let's just encourage cleanliness and keeping this gorgeous plan beautiful. On another call, I recommended some mile markers. So for those that want to walk or run, like how fun would it be to say, oh, you've reached 1 mile, 2 miles, or 3 more miles to Top Golf, fun things like that. And then the last thing is safety at night. I'm so glad to hear Commissioner Lay talk so much about lighting. It's very, very important at night. And folks like to walk along not only Old Bayshore, but the Bay Path at night. So again, being careful about our animals out there and our birds, but I please consider some lighting along the Bay Path in the evening too, so that people can walk safely at night. And that's all I have, but thank you so much. One more comment just on the pedestrian crossways. I believe Vice Chair Martos had asked this. Even now, my guests walk to New England Lobster, really popular restaurant, right? So again, those crosswalks clearly marked, safe, it's pretty important because cars go pretty fast right now. And thank you. That's all for me. And if I can help with anything or answer questions, please let me know.
Thank you. I thought those were great comments. Let's go round one last time to see if any commissioners have any last thoughts, and we can go from there. Commissioner Israelite, I believe we started with you in the last round.
No, just that I'm really, really happy to see the vertical connect. I think we call them vertical connectors, but I mean, Mr. Fletcher, you hit the nail on the head. I remember when I first moved here and I was trying to, they're so sketchy and you don't even know if it's, private property. So that I'm very happy, I think we talked about that last time. Very happy that you emphasize that. And I just think it's just going to be an amazing improvement. And I'm so excited to see it when it's finished. And thank you for doing such a great job.
Thank you, Commissioners. Commissioner Lee?
Yes, I wanted to mention that a couple years ago, I assisted some visitors to Burlingame. I couldn't understand why they were walking where they were walking. It turned out they were from France and they were staying at the Hyatt, just on the other side of Bayshore. The way they were trying to get to downtown Broadway. So they walked north on the sidewalk along the Hyatt, which, as you think about it, it's on the west side. Then they did the run for your life across the 101 freeway entrance, which needs to be addressed. We need some kind of safe way because people walk the shortest way. They're not going to walk all the way over to the overpass. They're going to take the shortest route. So these visitors for France, I saw them. I couldn't figure out where are they going? What are they doing? They ran across the 101 freeway entrance, got on the sidewalk. It's at a bus stop right there, then crossed over the Broadway overpass. And then I caught up with them when they were at the gas station there at Rollins and Broadway and asked them, where are you going? Where are you trying to go? I could see they were confused, but I completely agree with our general manager who spoke tonight that people are going to walk the shortest route and they want to get to the downtowns and they're going to walk it. So for example, from the Hyatt or whatever else is on the west side, they need that sidewalk to connect. And so we have the issue of helping the pedestrians cross there at 101 and not make them cross 3 different times in unregulated intersections that pedestrians are trying to cross. And they're not going to walk all the way down to that Cadillac Avenue overpass and go an extra 3 blocks for walking. So anyway, I'd like to address that area too and realize that visitors do want to walk. And like I saw this French group, they were just totally confused. So thank you.
Okay, Vice Chair Martos.
I have no go backs. Thank you.
Okay. Well, and I will just say, because I was trying to hold comments for this round, I thought this was like one of the most thoughtful plans I've seen. I've been doing this like 9-10 years. This is one of the most thoughtful plans I've seen come before us. I had very few questions because you just addressed anything I could think of. It was really great. And I held back on that, but I'm fortunate to be able to close on that note. It was really, really thoughtful, excellent plan that would be great for the city. And I'm glad it would be great for our hotels, which I very much appreciate, are an important part of our economy. And I just wrapped up a tour myself representing, having a long time represented a hotel chain. So I know how hard that business has been for the past couple of years, and I'm eager to see it come back. And I think this will really help. So thank you. Thank you so much. This is a great plan. I hope we can make it happen. And thank you to our public attendees for joining us for the discussion. So if it's okay with everybody, I'm gonna gavel that one out. Thank you very much, Brian. Just wonderful job.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to item 7, I believe we're at engineering reports.
Through the chair, I think we skipped one more. The old TDA.
Oh. Sorry. That's right. So we're at item 6D, Transportation Development Act, Article 3 grant update. Apologies.
No problem. Been a while since I got to do this in front of you all. All right. So Good evening, Commissioners. So tonight we'll be going over the next round of the Transportation Development Act, or TDA Article 3 program is occurring. Quickly going over the program overview. It's awarded to our local jurisdictions. So in this case, everyone in San Mateo County. It's funded through our State Transit Assistance Fund, basically the sales tax on gas and diesel. Also, it includes a local transportation fund, which is a 1/4 cent sales tax. Of this, the CCAG, or the City County Association Governments, their board will be awarding the grants, but it'll be scored by the county BPAC. And we'll get into a little bit of those when that'll occur. So first off, the eligible projects for this. There are 2 types that we're looking at. We are looking at capital projects as well as planning projects. And then the construction of bicycle or pedestrian capital projects, those are the quick builds we're also looking at. Restriping bicycle lanes. And the planning one is the development of a comprehensive bicycle or pedestrian plan. And so this seems like a little bummer, but previous years, before we had a bike ped master plan, we would apply for this and we weren't successful. However, now they're switching back and they are looking at comprehensive bicycle plans. So we kind of are off, out of sync on that, but we will continue. We do have one and we will use it. And the last one is, a maintenance of a multi-purpose path closed. That would be the only one we have of that magnitude is the Bay Trail. Again, if we get into a little bit of the details, the capital projects, there's almost $2 million available for that. Of that, we're only eligible, or the maximum we can get is $400,000. For planning, they have $300,000, and the maximum award of that is $100,000. We can only do one grant or one application for each type. So one capital or one planning. The dates, sorry about that. The dates that we just had the call last month where they introduced it, and we asked our questions at that little call for projects with other agencies. The application is due November 15th. Fortunately, that falls falls after our next meeting. So we will be able to meet one time before we submit the application. Staff will have to do a presentation in front of the county BPAC on sometime in January. And then we're looking at approval sometime in March. The selection, what they're looking at is that it's consistent with the agency's bicycle master plan to show that the community has been engaged. We're just not coming up with something ourselves. Also, they're looking at some consistency with the countywide bike ped master plan that was just recently approved. Connections to safe route to schools. And these next couple, the Cal Environment Screen, equity focus area, and having a TDA project funding history. Those are new to this cycle. And good news for Burlingame and bad news on the first one is that Burlingame has a healthy area without some of these issues that would affect it. So we would score poorly on that, although we're in a healthy area. And the equity focus area, we've dealt with that previously. They're looking at communities of need, and we don't have many of those. And the last one is TDA funding project history. This is something, our roundabout was funded through TDA funds. So this is something we'll probably lose points on. And the last one is a field video, which we will look at as well.
We'll nail that one, right?
We had a very good field video the last time by some of the BPAC members, but we'll see what we can do on this. We might have to engage them again. Bicycle master plan. If you recognize this is the map of what we're hoping to complete our network. And the area we're going to focus on is up in the northern part of the city. And we're looking at Davis Drive between Alomar and Casada, Truesdale Drive between California and Casada, as well as Murchison between California and Sequoia. So what we're looking at is trying to do some of the quick builds here, but starting to initiate the priorities in the master plan. So looking at Murchison, we are looking at trying to create a separated bikeway there. Obviously through this one, we're looking, it's showing some physical barriers, some landscape medians. At this time, we may not be able to do those, but we could definitely start a quick build, which would give us a higher possibility of getting awarded. So we're checking to that. Next, we have Truesdale, and again, striping improvements, road diet. That's something we can look at further, and that's what we're going to try to push with this grant. And for Davis, we're going to have to, we'll review. The bike ped master plan didn't identify anything, but we would go through the same process. No different than last month when you saw California Drive, where we're going to, if we get these funds, we're going to do final design construction, but we're going to do some of this community outreach to further work with the communities and adjacent neighborhoods. So with that, that ends my presentation. I would also like to add that previously we haven't had this amount of time with the TDA grant. We've kind of thrown it in front of you, hoping that you folks will be able to sign off a letter of support. If there's something else that the commission feels, some projects, we're open to taking a look at it. However, with that, we still have a November 15th deadline, and we'd like to suggest breaking into one of the subcommittees and then just kind of limiting it to 2 weeks. Something could be looked at, but then 2 weeks after that, we have to get together our application, because we do have to. I was looking at it again today. We do have to get some environmental clearance. So just keep those things in mind. But we are like to get your feedback on those.
Okay, we'll start with Commissioner Lee. Your thoughts?
Hi, I like the 3 choices. 2 of them are called out in the bike ped plan, which I like our group focusing on what is in the bike ped plan. And the 3rd one's right by the school, right by where there's a lot of hits of children on bikes in particular. So I like it all the way around. Go for it, Andrew. Great.
Okay, Commissioner Israeli.
I agree with Commissioner Lee. I think they all sound great. So fingers crossed.
Okay. Vice Chair Martos.
Yeah, I agree with my fellow commissioners. Mr. Wong, the 3 projects, are they in priority order? Do we, if we don't get all 3 or money for all 3, how would you rank them? If we just get a portion of the money, how do you think you would allocate it to the 3 projects?
Through Chair, again, what we're looking at are quick builds, right? Striping, maybe if we want to kind of mimic a curve or something, we're going to do vertical delineators, something like that. We should be able to fund all 3 of these with that. We're not looking at, I mean, that 400,000 max, we should be able, if we needed it, that's what we should do. If we come out like we're towards the bottom and we have to split, we'd have to look at it a little bit more. We haven't totally we haven't done the ballpark cost estimates for each, but we'll just go off the bike ped master plan, whichever one's highest, we'll just chip away.
Okay, that's reasonable. Okay, thank you.
My only comment is, you mentioned Davis, and that obviously overlaps with the study we're doing around the traffic flows for BIS. And I do wonder if the time, the calendar's not our friend, but that could be the strongest opportunity. The conditions there are so bad that if we were to come up with some improvements that aligned with a strategy around addressing the BIS drop-off situation, because I know when we walked it, there was some discussion about turnarounds. I think we were on Davis further down, or maybe that was the other cross street, his name I'm forgetting. I just wonder if it might not be advantageous. Davis is on our bike ped master plan, right? It's a key route, but I wonder if we looked at it in the larger context of a safe route to school, if that wouldn't be something that could score higher, given the amount of middle schoolers we have flowing through there, because that's certainly a pain point that I'm hearing as a commissioner. So I almost think if you're going to do Davis, you have to do that, because if we start thinking about traffic flows, and we start thinking about Davis going one way, you wouldn't want to go for a grant and then have the people doing the traffic flow say, yeah, but we're going to run it one way in the other direction, right? You'd want it to be cohesive. So that's my own bias. It seems like the biggest problem, one of the biggest problems we have to solve right now. But I understand that obviously the timing is tough. Truesdale's also by school, so that's certainly worth noting. So that was my only comment. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Mr. Wall.
Through the chair, again, like I mentioned earlier, there's not a kind of a concept yet for Davis. So as part of it, we will engage the school community as well as the neighbors and come up with something, right? That one's, it's just slightly behind these, because these, at least we have a working kind of drawing, the others we don't. Again, strategically, we place the limits on these to at least connect with some of the schools. So, those points, those safe route to school points, we hopefully get, so. Yeah.
Well, like I said, we could hit it out of the park if Davis really fits into a broader plan. But I know we're only getting started thinking about it. So, okay, well, that's all I have. I don't think we have any public comments. So if anybody confirming no one has a go back, as Vice Chair calls it.
Through Chair, I will, if you guys are good with it at some point, we can try to wrap this up earlier. We will be seeking a letter of support for this, as well as we've shown this to the BPAC. At least they got it a while back, so I'm not sure when they managed to look at it, but if we will request one from them as well.
Right. So. Right.
Okay. Chair.
Please proceed.
Thank you. I did talk to BPAC because I'm on the subcommittee, and they said they're very happy to write a letter supporting these 3 projects. Thank you.
Right.
So I wonder if, since we're finished with item 6D, if we can maybe loop back and approve the August minutes.
Chair Whitten?
Yes.
I did get an email from Chair Beatty in regards to that item. So I wanted to read the record.
Please go ahead. Okay.
Okay, so it's a quick email. It says, hi, sorry to email this BPAC comment. I needed to jump off. The BPAC is supportive of the bike lanes proposed for the 3 streets, Murchison, Truesdale, and Davis. All of these areas are very important with respect to schools, the Millbrae Caltrain station, and shopping centers. Davis was recently identified as a priority for bike facilities in the BIS walk audit. BPAC thinks it's a smart proposal for this grant application, assuming that we are talking about bike lanes on all 3 streets. We also think that the designs are straightforward enough and we are far enough along talking about them that Burlingame can present designs that are beyond the initial concepts which will enhance our chances of winning this grant. We will be happy to write a letter of support for this project pending details. Thanks, Leslie.
Great to hear. Thank you for getting that in. Okay, so now for real, closing that item, and what if there's no objections, I'd like to go back and consider the August minutes. I have one question, but did anybody else have any comments on the August minutes? I'm seeing head shake. So, and I know Vice Chair Martos is gonna abstain. So here's my one question. There was an extensive discussion in August of the California bike facility south of Broadway. And I did have an opportunity to watch council's consideration of that. And they seemed to have pretty extensive comments from BPAC, which came after our meeting. And I'm just wondering, because these minutes weren't approved and we didn't formally pass any motions, how much of our discussion actually got to the city council? That's a question for you, Mr. Wall.
Oh, sorry, I was making sure. Through Chair, I know the director requested we provide minutes, but the video, which is the record, was available.
Yeah,
they were able to.
It's available.
Those who are interested.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a concern of mine. Like, this is why I often push for motions where no one's even asking, because I don't know if the city council is going back and finding our meetings and watching the videos. They might, but they might not. And they may tell me if they see this video. And I think the BPAC is pretty organized about getting their comments in, and kind of the worst part is those comments came, we didn't even get a chance to react to the BPAC's comments because they came after our meeting, which you can also see recorded in the minutes here. Now, we discussed this at length, thought a lot about the issues, and I did get a call from one city council member, and that member didn't seem to really know a lot about what we thought about. So I am a little concerned that when we're dealing with these time-sensitive things, that we should not be, we couldn't rely on the minutes because they didn't get the minutes, I'm assuming, because they were draft, they weren't approved. I don't know what we said actually went in to the city council, and sure, they could have watched the video, but who knows? So I do want to be careful, and maybe this is sort of, my advice to the next chair. I think we've got to be really careful about considering things that are going to the city council and not moving. Right. I think we have to do it because we have to do it, and we have to be assured that that goes into a presentation, because otherwise my fear is, this is kind of a worst case scenario for me, which is, we were on video somewhere, I don't know who saw it, and then the BPAC gave comments that we never even got to see or react to. And then that's what the city council was looking at when they looked at the California bike lane. And that was a close vote. I don't know if my fellow commissioners know that, but it was 3-2. It was a pretty close vote. And I had the opportunity to talk to one council member, but I just don't know how much of our thinking there actually was reflected back to the people who made the decision.
Through the chair, just to further add, the staff report as well as the presentation did summarize Teaspoon's comments on that. We went through obviously we were taking notes while we were presenting to you, and so we incorporated those into it.
Could we, I know this is a headache that you don't want, but maybe in the future, one, I think I already said we should try and go out of our way to make motions, because there's a risk if we don't. But then the other thing is if staff is saying, hey, we're going to pass your comments on, I think it would be really helpful, like, before 48 hours, 72 hours before that staff report is submitted, that you don't have to submit the whole thing, but that if there's a summary of our meeting that's being passed to city council, if we're taking the time to get a quorum to approve our minutes, then I think it's probably worthwhile to take the time to allow us to review the summary of our discussion that's actually going to go to the city council and get read and be the thing they rely on, and say, hey, I don't think we said that, or can we just go back and look at the video, or I think you should add these 2 points because I think they're really important. Look, I'll stop there. I don't know if any other commissioners have any thoughts on this. Actually, I see that Commissioner Lee does have her hand up, and all right, Commissioner Gillette, I just saw that.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I do have comment. I like your suggestion that going forward, because these are time sensitive and we only get one shot at it frequently. And this is a big project and an important project. So I would like to consider going forward that we do vote on this so that we have a clear recommendation or a clear statement going to city council. I mean, if they watched our tapes, they would have severe sleep issues if they watched our tapes. And no one's going to read all the minutes. And like you said, they didn't even get them. They're not even.
It's too late.
But I mean, if we actually had a motion and voted on items that are time sensitive like this, then that information, I would assume, would get to the city council. And after thinking about the plan, because I thought maybe it was going to come back to us for a recommendation and vote. That was sort of my impression. I mean, I would change my suggestion of what I think would work best for the bike lanes on that little section between Broadway and Oak Grove. So I do like the idea of voting on things. So we have even if it's not a 5-0 vote, or even if it's just 3-2, but at least we have a direction going to city council. So thank you.
Yeah. All right, Commissioner Gillette, I see you.
I just wanted to comment, when I first started on the commission and we would talk about important issues, and I mean, we would really hash things out and spend a lot of time and mental energy on it. And then, it was said, okay, the staff will present our opinions or discussion or summary to a city council. And it always struck me as being kind of funny because, we not only did we not write whatever goes to them, but we never really saw it. And it certainly does not reflect on my trust of our staff whatsoever. So please understand that. But it is kind of funny. It's kind of like doing something really important and then turning it to someone, a middle person who's then turning it into the staff. But we don't even know what the contents are, how it was received or anything. So it's always felt like a little bit of a disconnect and a funny way to communicate important information to the city council, to me. And it would be interesting if there is a better way that doesn't violate the Brown Act, that we can still make sure that the true gist of what we really want to summarize and how we feel about things can be transmitted in a more transparent way.
Yeah, I think it would be a start just to be able to see it, right? And we can speak for ourselves. It doesn't have to be a vote to say, hey, there's 2 things that happened in that meeting that I don't see there. Please point that out, or I'll call some city council members. I mean, I feel I'm bringing this up because I got a call from a city council member out of the blue. This is the joy of being the chair. And I didn't know they were looking at it. And I was like 6 weeks out of date. It'd been 6 weeks since I looked at it. And I was sitting in my car, because that's when you called me, like trying to remember what the hell just trying to recollect. And if I had had the opportunity to look at whatever summary of the discussion was in the staff report when he called me, I said, oh yeah, I was just looking at this. And this is how we felt. And, you know, I got there anyway. I mean, my brain's halfway working, but, and I was actually personally happy the way they came out, so it's fine. But it just seems like, as you said, Commissioner, so it's important enough that we just need an opportunity to see it, and it does additionally. And I don't know how we can manage this. I'm thinking about, but you know, I do think we deserve at least an opportunity to respond, to address whatever BPAC is bringing up. It feels a little unfair that we look at it and then BPAC is given an opportunity to tell us what they think. They don't. And then they make comments to the city council and we don't even have a chance to say, well, we looked at that and we considered it, but we agree or we disagree. Just didn't even happen, right? So just something, a process point. We're always working on process and it seems annoying, but I think it does affect our work. And I know that I've had a city council member say, I often, and John Martos has heard this from our earlier days, it's like, I really wanted to know what you guys thought about that. And I didn't really. Vice Chair Martos, you're sitting quietly. I don't know if it's because something's happening in the game or you just have no comments or both. Okay.
One more comment. You know, we did have a vote on that one. So what we'll work better on though is getting those minutes wrapped up a little sooner. That's because
did we have a vote on that issue? Because I was reading the minutes and I didn't see a vote.
I believe we.
Am I wrong? I'm happy to be wrong. But I actually saw something in the minutes that said we were not no formal motion was requested or made at this time. Ms. Mai indicated they would review the comments received and would determine what can be incorporated in the upcoming city council presentation.
Let me check back at that because I was pretty sure, and I haven't.
If that's the case, maybe the minutes are wrong because I said to myself when I read that, like, man, Howard, you failed because you usually force a vote. And that, by the way, is my failure. I should say I'm being like hypercritical, but the truth is this is my failure as chair. I should have just forced a vote.
And we'll look into
unless I did and the minutes are wrong and I'm just not remembering.
And remember the August meeting was the second time we looked at it, right? The first time was earlier at the June meeting.
I do recall that. Look, the minutes brought the meeting back pretty fresh in my mind. I remember, you know, I remember what we discussed. I remember the controversy, you know, a member of the city council asked me about that. But they did not, I don't think they knew that we took a firm position. They just had the BPAC comments. And it seemed, I thought that was regrettable. It's an outcome I would like to try and avoid. But if the minutes are wrong, then
the minutes are correct. I'm getting a note here that it was voted in June. We got the support in June. That's why we took the direction to go forward with what we did, because there were questions regarding it was brought up of, I don't know how it came up, but there was, you know, one looking at a southbound class 2. That was, and remember we talked about the buses. We wanted to see the better transit, or we wanted to have better transitions. And then I remember Commissioner Lee did bring up about how the buses were going to work. I believe that happened in June. So
I think, and forgive me if I'm getting this wrong. I mean, look, I think we had this extra alternative B at the August meeting, which was pretty heavily debated when it went to the city council. And I think we're almost unanimous in it being against it. Commissioner Lee, were you? I can't remember off the top of my head. I have to reread these minutes again, but I think we had a pretty broad consensus that we wanted what was presented in June, not the second bike lane alternative B. And we just didn't vote on it. And I think that like I said, looking back, BPAC came in with all their comments and how they wanted alternative B. It's fair to disagree, but we didn't get to say, yeah, we looked at that. We looked at it and we debated it, and we all thought that the alternative A was the right answer. And it ended up being a pretty close run thing. So I just want to make sure, these meetings go long, they're late. I'm making them later now as we speak, but if we're going to go this long and make them late, I want to make sure that the work product gets delivered, right? Because we're all losing sleep once a month. So, okay, with that, we still have to approve the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move we approve the minutes as written, August minutes as submitted.
And I second that motion.
Okay, all in favor? And we have to take the roll. We have to take the roll.
All right, Commissioner Lee,
Aye.
Commissioner Israelet,
Aye.
Vice Chair Martos,
Abstain.
Chair Wetton.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0-1-1. Okay. Sorry. At last. Item 7A. Mr. Wong.
Sorry, through the chair, it'll be a quick one. We've covered quite a bit this. There's only one page. So the first one will be the Broadway grade separation, and we're actually going to talk with the TA and folks and try to get this cleared up so we can get something out in front of you. Trying to get the Caltrain to move on a little bit more. So hopefully you'll see this one soon, but that's it. We're just having a meeting with them tomorrow. So that's kind of your latest update. Broadway pedestrian street lighting project. We've got this project underway. It's going to be a little slow because we're approaching the holiday season, and we've worked with the Mr. Kavarian there at the Broadway bid and trying, he's very anxious that we not impact the businesses. So we're going to do our best to minimize that. So that's going to be why you might not see it going gangbusters, because we don't want to tear it up only to have holiday season upon us and folks not able to do anything. So we're procuring equipment, and we're just getting that one ready. And the Highland Parking Garage got opened up today, and Chair Wetton as well as Vice Chair Martos were both there, and it was it was a good effort. So now there's a lot going downtown. We still have the other part of the other component of this, the housing going up. And I don't know if you've been downtown, but the post office is parts of it aren't there anymore. So quite a bit happening. And with that, it's back to you, Chair Wetton.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wong, and it was
Sorry,
nice.
does anyone have any questions? I mean.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Any questions? Oh, I see Commissioner Lee's hand. Sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Lee.
Thank you. It had been my impression that the Broadway street lighting was just the street lights being replaced with a very nice design of street light, if I recall the diagram. But when I looked on the city's website, it looks like there's also sidewalks being repaired or altered, and then also repaving of the roadway. Is that part of the same project? It seemed like it was, and then I'd like to be able to comment on those other changes.
Through Chair, the project primarily is replacing streetlights. We're adding a few, so that could be where some of the sidewalk repairs come in, because we had to add. We did a lighting analysis to make sure there was coverage with the streetlights, and so in order to make sure we got total coverage, there might be some sidewalk area. And I'll have to go back because we have a separate resurfacing project that's occurring. But obviously, if we have to tear up the streets for the streetlights, it doesn't make sense to do the resurfacing and then go back to it. So I think that's where that is. There might be some trench work we have to do to cross the street, and so we're not wanting to. Repave a street only to dig it up again. So I believe that's what you're seeing, because this project is strictly, I mean, we're tight on funds, so it's limited to pretty much just the street lighting component.
Thank you.
Okay, Sergeant Perna, thank you for waiting patiently, as always.
Hi, Commissioners. I'm going to share my screen here. Give me a second. I don't have the ability, it looks like I don't have the ability to share a browser. I don't know why that is, but give me 1 second here. This is not working. Hi there. Let me move my thing here. So yeah, I don't have the ability to move. If someone can put the report on the screen, it's not letting me. When I go ahead to click the to share my browser screen, it says I don't have the capability.
We will work on that right now. We'll see if we can get it up.
Okay. In the meantime, as you can see, the collision report that's here now looks like there were 17 documented collisions. Looks like there was a vehicle versus bicycle on Rollins Road, and that was the only bicycle accident I saw, or one that involved a bicycle. There were no pedestrians from what I could see on here. Did you guys have any questions, or did you want me to look into that one a little bit, or do you have any questions about any other ones?
I'll just pipe up. I don't have anything specific tonight, Sergeant Perna. Let's see if any other commissioners had anything specific that they wanted to ask about.
Just if you could describe the bicycle collision on Rollins, that'd be helpful, just so we have some idea of what the situation is on Rollins.
No problem. It was actually Rollins Road in Dwight, and it looks like it was another situation where a vehicle was overtaking a bicyclist and just didn't give them enough of a berthing, enough of a area, which is a violation of which is a vehicle code violation now, 21760 subsection B. But it looks like it was, let's see here. Yeah, so it doesn't say exact. I'm trying to look at exactly where, like, what the which direction it was. So they're both going northbound on Rollins Road, and the bicyclist said that they obviously didn't hear or see the vehicle, which approached from the rear, and in some way there was a collision there with the bicycle and the motorist, with the motorist being at fault.
I'm sorry, was the motorist cited?
No, the motorist was not cited.
Bicyclist injured?
Yes, there was a documented injury.
And we don't cite them, the drivers?
As a matter of practice, no, we don't. DMV takes action on their driving record in an injury collision. So any injury collision, whether it's a bicyclist or not, is a 2-point violation on someone's license, whereas an infraction carries a 1-point violation. So it's actually significantly more serious than if we would have cited them alone.
Sergeant Perna, actually, if it doesn't take too long, I would be interested in the collisions on El Camino at Carmelita and Oak Grove.
Sure. Give me just a second to pull that up for you. So that was the first collision on El Camino, the one at El Camino and Carmelita. It looks like two of the three were failure to yield collisions. So the first one at Carmelita, that basically means that someone turned left or something like that in front of the driver that had the right of way to go straight. So the first one here at Carmelita, 210. So the vehicle was traveling northbound on Carmelita, the #1 lane, and made a left turn. onto westbound Carmelita, and the other motorist was traveling southbound and had the right of way.
Isn't the left turn on Carmelita illegal?
So, you know, I was thinking that I'd have to look it up to be exactly sure, but northbound, I'm not sure if northbound, I know southbound, there's a no left turn sign.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
I'm
this
not-
person was going northbound.
Yes. They're
Okay.
making a left going to like to west, you know, the west side of El Camino. So I'm not exactly sure where they, like if there's a sign there. I don't believe there is.
Okay.
From memory, but
Yeah, I'm thinking of southbound.
Yeah.
Yeah, northbound is, you can turn left onto Sanchez.
Right.
Okay.
And Carmelita.
And then the
Got it.
next one was El Camino in Oak Grove, and that was, let me check that one for you to get the exact details. So this one, the driver was, the party at fault was southbound number 1 lane, and made a left turn, and while the vehicle had the right of way, it was northbound. So they made a left-hand turn, southbound El Camino onto, you know, made a left onto eastbound Oak Grove, and right in front of the other motorist who had the right of way.
Got it. And that was, looks like it was, from reading the lines right, that was right around school pickup, drop off for BHS.
So let me, I could tell you.
1539, right? 339.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it did involve a juvenile motorist.
But going to BHS, not from.
I don't know if they were what school, if they were even.
Yeah. But someone, it would be, the turn would have been toward BHS, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, but that's very helpful. It's always good to hear about a good sample of these things. Thank you very, very much, Sergeant Perna, as always. So with that, I think I can move on to the next item, 7C, which is, sorry, my agenda got tossed over. 7C is farmers market. I have not reached out as I should have. So this is something I still hope we can get going, but nothing to report this month. So why don't we go straight to 7B, TSPC Chair, Commissioners Communications. I'll just say a lot of low-grade complaints about issues that we are looking at happily, BIS and southbound California, north of Broadway, which I know is supposed to come back to us next week. But yeah, I get a lot of poking about those two issues from my various neighbors and friends in Burlingame. Anybody else have any specific communications? Okay. Then we'll close that, go to item A. Committees and subcommittee reports. Downtown, the Downtown Parking Committee met today at the ribbon cutting of the Highland Parking Garage. That had been for a while, actually part of some of our work. Obviously, downtown parking patterns are still TBD, and now we're losing Lot E, so things will get interesting. I don't know if there's any updates forthcoming about the restaurant parklets. We're still in kind of a holding pattern there, I think. You're on mute, Mr. Wong. No, nothing to say. Okay, so we'll just go to Broadway parking traffic issues. Commissioners Israelit and Lee.
I guess I'll speak first. I just was wondering how the staff is doing on our, Commissioner Israel and I met in May, and we developed a small report on May 22nd and submitted it to staff. We had a number of recommendations and Broadway grade separation priorities. wondering how staff is doing on that. Mr. Wong, do you still have this list? Does it matter hill of beans to anyone? We spent a lot of time on this.
Through the chair, not to get into it. Yes, I have the list. Again, for the Broadway grade set, we've got to square away what we're doing right now. And then I have forwarded the list to Mr. Sy, so we're well aware of it.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on Broadway? Okay, let's move on to school traffic.
Wait, sorry.
Oh, sorry, didn't see you there.
No problem. And sorry, you guys, that I turned off my video, but I have not eaten all day and was starting to get hangry and didn't think you needed to watch me eat. So, Mr. Wong, can you remind me, we were going to talk about the California Broadway thing again, and the staff was going to work on that. When was that? When are we getting a presentation?
Through chair, we're hoping next month.
Okay, next month. I remember saying it was my birthday present or something, but I couldn't remember if it was October or November. Okay, thank you so much. And just by the way, I actually did have a communication with somebody from Millbrae complaining about that intersection. So anyway, all right, awesome. I'm very excited to hear the report.
Okay. So why don't we talk about school traffic briefly? And I think we touched on it earlier, that and my view is BIS is probably like 99% of what our committee needs to think about. And I don't know if it would be useful for us to weigh in on the CCAG grant. So Commissioner Israelite, we may want to just go offline and discuss that. See how we can support Mr. Wong.
Sure.
Yeah. And then Commissioner Rebelos isn't here, so I'm going to skip citywide transportation alternatives. And Commissioner Lee, I don't know if we heard the BPAC update, so I don't know if there's anything you want to add. No, great. Okay. Future agenda items. I think I talked to Mr. Wong earlier today at our ribbon cutting about getting California Drive back. I think that's probably top of the list. I think we're probably going to want to have space on our agenda next month to talk about this grant, because I don't know if we'll have another bite at the apple in November. Technically, we'll have time, but it'll be like right before you have to submit. Go ahead, Mr. Wong.
Here, I thought based on tonight, I mean, we could bring it back, but we're just going to move forward with, I mean, although we didn't make a motion, everyone seemed to be in support of the proposed project that we have. So we plan to move forward with that, and separately, we could seek a letter of support.
Yeah, I think we all are. I'm not backing away from our support. Well, it might be good to take the opportunity to get feedback. You've got a nice, month lead time. Well, I'm sorry, wait a minute. I'm addled and I'm realizing that I'm off by a month. So actually there's going to be almost no time at that point. It'll be baked. I take that one back. So the main thing will be California. Are there any other big items you think we should be looking at in the near future, Mr. Wong?
We've done a pretty good job. This meeting cleared out some, but
yeah,
we can take a look. I'll see if anything else pops up. We don't have any stop requests that have come in. We've been dealing with a lot of red curbing that we've been able to handle. But yeah, I mean, we're open to anything right now. I see Commissioner hand up.
Commissioner Lee, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yes, a couple of things. First, Governor Newsom signed AB 43, which gives local authority and local discretion over speed limits. So I think it'd be interesting if we could have a discussion on what our standards might be in reducing some of our speed limits. For example, Truesdale, whose average speed was 31, but it was set up to 35. It'd be nice to have that brought down to 25. But to get a policy going now that we do have local discretion over speed limits, to discuss that. That's one item. And then the other thing was, it seems like there aren't clear guidelines, just generalizations and discretion of who wants the stop sign, of how we put stop signs in. It seems like a lot of neighborhoods want many more than what are being approved. We had one approved over at Victoria Park that really didn't meet any guidelines, but it was requested by, I believe, the Parks Department, so they got it. But it'd be nice to have the staff look at stop signs, speed limits, and the crosswalks, all with using the zones that are part of the bicycle pedestrian plan that we all passed, and to be much more open-minded putting in stop signs where neighborhoods would like them. So I would like, it is just a general rule of a pedestrian count of 2 per hour or 4 per hour or breaks per minute. It's just a general guideline. It's not a written in stone requirement. So I think that'd be nice and would make Burlingame a friendlier place to live. Thank you.
So I'll pipe right in. I think that's huge news. I mean, this has been a pain point in our discussions for almost my entire time on this commission. Is we have streets that probably should not be 25 miles an hour. I would love to hear a presentation from the staff of what AB 43 means for us, and whether that means we can finally look at, where we have effective 1-lane streets in parts of Burlingame, whether we really need to stick to this 25-mile-an-hour limit, which is not safe.
It might not, I mean, it probably is going to take a city attorney to look at the new law, and it's probably not going to be something that would be ready for next month's agenda, but it's going to take time for them to, it's a new law, so there's no precedents and things to look at. So I'm sure the city attorney would probably have to look at it and work with the staff and do a presentation to us.
Yeah. I'm probably the wrong person to tell that's going to take 2 months.
3 months.
Yeah, no. So, well, we'll leave it with you, Mr. Warren, but actually that's really important to us. I'm glad Commissioner Lee brought that up. That's a game changer. And I'd like to talk about it at the earliest opportunity. It's a great suggestion.
For setting speed limits, we follow the guidelines kind of set by the vehicle code by the state. So if the directives change, we have, we're going to look at it. So. Yeah.
That's great. So that's 2 items we've got. And then I throw, again, not necessarily this month, but BIS. It's a great problem that has been brought to us, tailor-made for us. I'd like to get on it sooner rather than later.
Where are we with that? I mean, we had a good discussion with Ms. Mai and really good comments and everything, but I don't know if I just spaced out, but what is the next step in the timeline I just want to make sure it doesn't fall through the cracks. When's the next step in the timeline for implementation, or what, final plans?
And through chair, I'll follow back on that. We've been busy with other projects, and I know Ms. Mai, I'll check back in with her. I know she's checked in with the school district, so we'll see where we're at with that. But
okay. And then I see Commissioner Lee. I see your hand. Go ahead. But you're on mute.
We keep talking about next month, but I believe we don't have a meeting on that date. Have we come up with the date? Thank you.
Through the chair, that was something we wanted to talk about. So I do have Commissioner Rebello's preference. So we can, if you want to discuss that, we can do that and then calendar the next meeting. That was something on my notes. Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah. I'm fine with that date. It was the 10th, right? I'm fine with that personally. I'll let commissioners, Vice Chair Martos, commissioners will speak for themselves.
Unfortunately, I cannot make the 10th, but I mean, you guys could move forward without me. Yeah.
I can make the 10th, I prefer the 9th, because I leave out of town the 11th, so. And I can do the 10th if we have to. And do we have a December, now that we're on the subject?
I'm sorry, what was the question about December?
Do we have one December 9th, right?
Well, it'll be the second Thursday of December.
Okay, all right, let's go stick with November then.
Yeah, that would be December 9th. Yeah, so November. So where are we? Commissioner Revelos can do the 10th. I can do the 10th. Commissioner Usually cannot do the 10th. Commissioner Lee, you can do the 10th.
If I must, but.
Commissioner Martos.
I can do the 10th.
Okay, so with apologies, Commissioner Israelit, since that time of year, we're probably not going to go 5 for 5. Let's just stick with the 10th.
That's totally fine.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not able to make it. But.
No, that's totally fair.
Okay, if I just.
Broadway on there. Apologies if we have Broadway on there for Commissioner Israelite.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's totally right.
Oh, that's going to be rough.
You know, I might be able to, there's a chance I'll be able to finagle something.
All right.
I'm not sure. Oh, that's just cruel irony.
Sorry.
I'll see what I can do.
Yeah. Okay. So with that, I mean, look, we're constrained by the Brown Act, but not to schedule things. So if we need to loop back and just schedule, you know, we can do that. But let's tentatively pencil in the 10th. And with that, I believe. Oh, one other item. Sorry, because I don't want to keep forgetting this. We did this great thing for Commissioner Launder, and we never did it for Commissioner Bush. So being chair, I probably just need to go back and do that, but we should just keep that in mind and see if Commissioner Bush wants to tune in either this month, November, December, maybe let's just get it in. I might want to just try and get it in before the end of the year. I sort of let that lie after we did the big thing for Commissioner Launder. I think I ran out of steam. So let's just get that one in. I'll call that a future agenda item. Okay, with that, I'm going to adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
Bye all. Thank you. Thank you.